Welcome to
Whoa,
the Barrel Vision podcast.
we start recording.
Harry?
No, sorry, I knew we'd start recording. We started talking.
Well, yeah, when I say welcome, that's the beginning. Because now people are welcome.
Yeah, you are welcome. You're welcome to the
We've
server.
let
Welcome
them in on our chat, our ramblings.
You're eavesdropping, basically.
Yeah, no, they're not eavesdropping. I let them in, right?
It's permitted eavesdropping.
So it's welcoming. It's not eavesdropping. It's not how it works.
So it's like you invite a bunch of people round to just sit there and listen to us talk, or try to talk.
Yeah, that is what podcasts are. That is all they
it's
are.
they're usually not in person. Some people do podcasts in person, but not regularly. Like
Yeah, but
large
not
events.
what with like actual an audience and everything.
Yes. It's not.
That's
it's
kind of
not
weird.
It's not just they don't just sit them in like an empty auditorium and live stream it.
Yeah. Anyway,
We could do that.
let's not do that. Probably can't afford an auditorium. We are here today to talk about deep rock. And
I was hoping that you would come up with like a very useful topic on the fly.
Right.
Just deep rock, which is
well, I didn't want to force us into anything. I thought you might have had something, but
salt hits. So the salt hits thing, I mentioned it last week. It was like if we don't have anything to talk about, we can just talk about the salt hits for an hour. And see if that works. It probably won't. I don't think it would, to be honest. So let's ignore that. Unless you have something better.
I haven't really bothered thinking about anything. So
That's fine, because I have something better. Actually, no, I'm going to save that. Sorry, I'm going to save that.
oh, cool. Yeah.
Something slightly not pressing, but relevant enough. Not something that's been in the game for a while. I want to talk about the actual some of the cosmetics again, not like we did last week. It was a full-on run about just the whole state of cosmetics and promotions. For which there is actually a video in the works.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's coming out. It will probably be done for this Saturday.
Really?
Yeah, I'm about halfway done, and it only. I
Oh.
mean, well, I did halfway just yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Albeit it took me like 8 hours, but
Okay.
yeah,
Good man. Good man. Of course, we're trucking along with the Overclock workshop. It's all good. It's all
yeah.
wonderful.
We know you guys like that, or at least
One person.
one guy. I wish I
That's
could
enough.
remember your name.
That's good enough.
But
I feel
we
bad
appreciate
that we don't
it.
have his name to hand.
Yeah.
Frankly, he's our greatest admirer.
We do have a couple. Like seriously, those comments that are like just like I really appreciate what you do, or look forward to the episodes. That is actually like you sometimes because until recently we were just passive enjoyers of YouTube. You know what I mean? Like you just watch YouTubers and they'd mention that like, oh, your comments really do mean a lot, and you're like, sure they do, but they actually do.
Yeah, but once we get bigger, it'll stop meaning anything.
Yeah, once we
caring.
hit like 1 million subscribers, which is inevitable, we're just gonna hate all of you
Next
but-
month,
yeah.
reach 1 million.
Once I release the next video, that is gonna get us 1 million subscribers.
I mean, as long as we can frame it in a way that is clickbaity enough.
I think it's plenty clickbait, but yeah. Thank you. Honestly, the comments are pretty cool. But what was the cosmetics?
Puts a smile in my eyes and a tear out my mouth.
Yeah.
The cosmetic thing. It wasn't cosmetics, but not broadly. I wanted to talk about the new framework because I think we discussed it when we talked about the cosmetic tree in the trailer breakdown.
Yeah, or
You
post
said
trailer.
it's the builder's choice framework. It's sort of the focus, sort of the big new framework for season 2, which seems to be a thing that they're doing, which I don't mind, but I might mind.
I like Yeah, I like that there's a good, at least seems to be right now, a constant stream of weapon frameworks. Because of like any cosmetic in the game, I think they're probably the nicest, because they're the ones you get to look at all the time while playing.
Yeah,
So
it's true.
it is pretty cool.
But you said when we saw Builder's Choice showcased in the trailer for season 2, your response was basically this just doesn't look like anything. I was fairly positive about it. Thought, oh, this is kind of neat. But the problem is, that's actually exactly how I feel. It's just like, oh, it's kind of neat, but it's not too much. It's weird. It's a strange one. It doesn't. It really doesn't feel distinct, to be honest. It's one of the frameworks I don't mind being critical of.
You know,
it's the point of it.
Some of them are like that. You know what I mean? Like there's like mechanized and the other one that is quite similar to that, where they kind of just tack on a little bit of something and then they call it a day. So I guess it's more than that. But literally, I speed ran the cosmetics in the cosmetic tree. Like I had like all of the other cosmetics immediately, but I've yet to get a gun, like a weapon thing. I've just not. I'm not to mention I've kind of like haven't played as much recently, but like yeah, I've just stopped. I don't care about these weapon stuffs. Like
to me, it's almost a better color scheme than an actual framework, in my opinion. I found it's really nice, vibrant yellow. It's got some blue accents. It's pretty all right. But unfortunately, it's not actually a weapon paint job.
Yeah.
Like it should be. As in, what I'm saying is, and there are mods for it. Unsurprisingly, you take the default paint job of any given framework exists as an actual paint job in the code, which is why it's so easy for modders to take it and be like, oh, you can now put what is the default look of a given framework and put it on another framework.
Yeah.
To change the colours that way. So like, I want that so badly.
Yeah.
So badly, I really do. It's like one of my biggest ones. I think there's a lot of changes that fall into that exact same category, like armor skins and weapon skins not being not the exclusivity thing necessarily. I just mean like I wish that, because honestly, I almost like the idea if they're not going to back down on having class coded color schemes, then I very much so like the idea of could we at least have the classes armor paint jobs as weapon paint jobs for those classes too, and then that would introduce class limited weapon paint jobs. But I don't think that would be a bad change either.
Well, it's the fact that they're kind of like they're not really doing anything. Like there's some class specific like armor skins, like I really can't really think of some for example. But you know, some the characters have their kind of like Drill has a lot of muddy brown ones that the other characters don't have. Those ones, they have plenty of them. So there's like a group of character specific but not inherently character colored ones, and then there's ones that are just completely generic and they're identical for all of them, like Black Crag, I think.
Well, obviously you wouldn't if you were to add like cross class paint jobs, so you could use any paint job in any class. You would exclude those ones. The ones that are basically the same would stay that way, and you wouldn't be able to use Gunner's Black Crag on Engineer. I don't think that would make much sense.
Yeah, but like it kind of, there are examples of like the same skin but being character specific, like Splattered. Splattered is the same skin but it's character specific because of the colors, right? But like you got the other ones that are just like it's black and red. That's it. That's all you get. Like you don't get black and actual, your dwarf's color, and so they don't really give a shit about color cohesion and like actually having, I don't know, like specific ones, but then they also do, and it's like pick. Like
no, but I do sometimes get the impression that we're more concerned about sort of matching our having very specific looks. Like you have a look, it's reflected in the armor paint job, the weapon frameworks, and weapon paint jobs.
We care about that far more than most people.
I think most people. I don't think it's a non-existent thing, but it's not at the top of everyone's list. And I just
it's
don't
also
quite get how.
It's also not like at the top of like Deep Rock's thing, because they would not have done the sheer amount of like camo green forced like headgears this season if they actually gave a shit about look cohesion. They don't. They're just adding things and then making it a restricted color that you can barely match with like anything other than a couple probably gunner skins.
They do want people to come up with more out there and wacky looks, and it's not really my thing, unfortunately. And I sort of feel like I've been pushed into it almost by the DLCs, in fact, because I get that the way that we sort of create looks for our dwarves. I would say it's almost born out of the cosmetic DLCs, and that a lot of people who haven't bought the DLCs, they're sort of left to sort of try and put things together in some way that looks good. Whereas with the DLCs, it becomes a lot easier, not only because every DLC introduces matching weapon and armor paint jobs. Well, actually, that's the main reason.
Yeah, they're the only real cohesive stuff that you can guarantee to have, really, is that kind of stuff.
But it goes slightly beyond that, obviously. Like I have this look across. Like, I have at least one dwarf, well, at least one loadout for every class. Use this look. It's just Scale Brigade, not armor. Scale Brigade armor paint job on an armor that has a lot of black on it, and then I'd use the weapon would be use the Dark Future paint job with 4th Relic. So and that's a look that's only really yeah, exactly. So it's a look that's only really possible with DLCs, and in a way, and it's kind of weird to say this, but I don't think it's entirely false. You're almost paying for that color cohesion or whatever, matching colors, and you don't really get that as much if you don't have any DLCs at all.
I mean, the DLCs, they're purely cosmetic. And the only reason you buy them is for cosmetic reasons, and they know that, so they actually try to make the cosmetics good, and they give them like nice colors and nice kind of schemes and stuff. Like there's like the gold element of some stuff, like the supporter, black of Dark Future. Both of these are like very reliable, good-looking colors.
Well, the supporter's a bit weird because the supporter pack is the oldest DLC, and it's meant to add sort of gold skins for both your armor and the weapons, but it's one of the weirdest ones in that for the weapons most notably, there's more brown than gold.
Yeah, if you want gold, Scale Brigade is really what you actually want to be using. It's like, plus the Scale Brigade gold is just better looking than the older gold. Like, it's just.
I think if you took the gold part Scale Brigade and put that all over a weapon, it'd probably look worse. The one on the supporter is much more metallic, actually. I think much more reflective. But also the armors in the supporter pack, or the armor paint job. Sorry. Pardon me. They're quite weird, to be honest. I think the best one is probably gunners, but even then, gunners you sometimes get a lot of these very big green parts.
Yeah.
But then the others, their sort of other colours are very exposed or using. I mean, mainly Engineer and Scout, the blue and the red shine through, and you don't look like the supporter pack weapon paint jobs are very high contrast. And they don't really match with the armors, in my opinion, most of the time. The one that works, though, and that you use, I know, on your gunner, your 5 gunner build, right? You use the supporter skin on your armor, and on your weapon, but you also use 4th Relic because that sort of switches the primary and secondary colours so that most of the gun is gold.
Yeah.
And it works really well. It's a good look. But
I also use it on the armor because I use the pumpkin head on it.
Yeah.
And the armor has a nice looking green to it, which I then kind of it's like the leaves of the pumpkins kind of thing. So I don't know.
Sure, why not?
Well, I'm not sure if that's the actual skin I use now, but for one of the gunner things, he has like a crotch plate that looks leaf shaped, and it goes like a really nice green. So
What?
yeah, I'm not sure if that's what I still run, but that's what I make my
Who's got
original one.
the crotch leaf plate? The what? The leaf crotch plate? I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about.
Gunner has like a big crotch like flap that
Yeah.
with
I mean, I don't know, but
supporter it goes green. Point is that's one of my favorite looks, and yeah, it's thanks to like the DLC stuff mainly, and event headgears tend to look quite good as well. They tend to put a lot more effort in the event ones, which
well, but they're also some of the more out there ones too.
they're out there, but if you can get them to work, they work. like sometimes they can be a bit ridiculous. Like the Christmas ones are a bit iffy. Like
Well, to be fair to the Christmas ones, I think I want to find it.
Santa hat's viable,
The
completely
frosty
viable.
top hat is sort of like
I have
the
that
top
one.
hat.
I use that one. It's
One of
good
the
with black
ones,
crack.
I think. Yeah, it would be. But I do wish it was just. Why don't we actually have a proper top hat? That's weird, right? That's not. It
We have
should be.
a bowler cap. Bowler cap. I don't know how you call it. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's some gaps in like things that just kind of seem obvious that they should just be, but there just isn't. like it's like I'm pretty sure there's like blue beard hair. That's not a thing. There's no blue. For one of the fucking default colours, there's just not a beard hair for. Which, as much as I probably wouldn't run it on most characters,
No, I wouldn't want blue hair, but
I think for Scout I might be able
option
to get
should
it
be
work. Yeah, but like, and just plugging it for when it comes out. These are the issues that I'm going to bring up in the video. There is going to be
So tune in on Saturday for a wild ride of controversy.
I don't think
But
it's
not really.
controversial
I don't
because
think it will be.
I'm not shitting on anything, and with the videos I make, I try to point out why I have this opinion before just saying it, right? Like I'm saying this is what we need to do without backing up why, like pointing out the issue, like I did with the driller thing. I didn't just suddenly say, oh yeah, we need to switch out HEs because no one uses them. I backed it up. Right, I showed that everyone's overwhelmingly uses the axes. Admittedly, what I then did is opinion and kind of with a bit of community behind it. But pointing out the fact that
the show.
Yeah, the show I love. I've watched it so many times. Point is, yeah, I like to back it up with a bit of evidence, and I did some counting, which is pretty advanced math. And
Whoa!
I have some fun numbers. I counted.
It's to be known as funbers.
Yeah, I counted how many headgears there are compared to like everything else, and I'm not going to say anything, but there are double the amount of headgears than the second most thing. So quite a lot, which yeah is a bit of an issue. It's not an issue. It's not bad that there's a lot of them, but there's just a bit too many of them, and it's getting a bit cluttered.
Because frankly, it would be nice if there was some more actually good sideburns.
Well,
Shit like that. But I don't want more. I don't want the same amount of sideburns as headgears because it's just.
Yeah, and you know, it's just the issue is that like they're adding more and more, but they're not particularly good. Like with the new like bandanas and stuff, they would be pretty alright. Maybe not that good, but they would be alright if they weren't forced colours, and it's the same with quite a few of the other ones. I mean, it is weirdly close to their face, right? But this is another thing that I can solve. I think if you imagined those, like the like, I don't know what you call them, not Ushankas, just the face cloth things that they added recently. If you added something that could like have goggles, they would probably look a lot better, which is another thing. Because they kind of just a lot of cosmetics tend to leave the eyes out in the open, and which isn't inherently bad, but it is kind of weird. That like especially I think the royal, the dwarf helmet that's just like the dwarf's face, but it's a helmet. I think that would be so much better if you couldn't see their eyes. Like if it was just like a kind of blacked out socket, it would look so much better.
What one are you talking about?
The like it's the one that you. It's just like a dwarf's face but instead of it's the helmet.
Grim Spectre.
Yeah, I think that would be so much better if you couldn't see like the dwarf's eyes sunken in the back of the helmet.
I mean, if it had like blacked out eyes, glowing eyes, that'd be awesome.
So much better. And so I think that's kind of a thing as well, that they need to kind of, I don't know, especially since you don't actually get to customize their eyes, and you shouldn't really, there's so little, right? If you could change the color of their eyes, you wouldn't be able to see it, but they're like the only real permanent thing most of the time.
Yeah.
But
so, yeah, the white one is balaclava. The sort of the green one is called thermal insulation, which I didn't know about. But yeah, that one would look great if you could put goggles on it too. That one I don't mind actually. It works well with a lot of gunner looks.
Yeah, and I think the white one, the white one, I don't know. The weird thing about the white one, because I think you could use it for, I think Driller might be the, I don't know. I think some people they have like a white coloured armor, which it could work with, but I think it's just so pulled to the face that your eyebrows are so prominent. Like,
I know what you mean. It's weird.
Like they're so strong, and you can't really. They're always going to be there unless you get rid of them. I think that would probably look even weirder. But yeah, if you could like slap on some like pulled back goggles or something on that thing, it would look good. But point is, I have a lot of ideas of how to kind of solve a few minor issues with the customization. Minor issues.
Minor. Because they're dwarves.
Yeah, and I'll get more into that then. So I probably shouldn't talk all about it now, because I could.
No. We should just. You got a script, right? Just read it.
I don't have a script for anything, which I probably should, but I don't know.
Nah.
As I'm like doing it, I'm kind of thinking, okay, when I get to this, I'll say about this kind of stuff, and like. Because I feel like if you have a script, then it feels stilted, and like I think your video of the audacity of DRG, which you're very fond of, by the way. Everyone that's watched Harry is very happy that it did as well as it did, and definitely didn't just want it to be buried. But yeah, having to read from a script makes it just feel more awkward and stilted and just kind of worse. Unless you're like used to reading from scripts, because obviously there are plenty of videos out there.
Sound, that was a plane crashing in my back garden.
Okay. Classic place. Right.
Huh?
Yeah. So, I think I want to stop talking about that, because I don't want to overlap everything. But I want to also build up a bit, and I think I've done that. So.
And now we'll kill that pipe entirely.
Pipe?
Shit. I had something on. Oh, right. I need to correct myself. Right, so, on the last podcast, I made a criticism of the crossbow.
Right.
That you couldn't. Well, I wanted it so that you could immediately switch to your alternate bolts, or switch back to either one, straight after firing. So you wouldn't, because I thought it was tedious that you had to reload and then switch again. I was wrong. You can do that. As soon as you fire it, you can immediately press reload and you'll load in the other bolt. And I love that. It makes the gun much better. And frankly, I've been having a good time with the crossbow recently. With firebolts. Which I don't think is going to be. I don't know if that's going to be popular.
Well, once again, comment. Someone did comment on the last podcast that they quite like firebolts. I think.
Yeah. I love that. Shout out to that guy.
I don't think they're as bad as Tom made them to look, really.
Well, yeah, we sort of had Tom was on the last podcast. He was almost on this one, but he chickened out.
Yeah.
Anyway. The first exposure we had to firebolts, which is a balanced overclock for the crossbow, was watching him use it. Was it a deep dive? I think it was a normal deep dive, actually. Or maybe it was the elite. I don't know. Either way, he put on a pretty poor show.
He would shoot like a grunt guard in the face and nothing would happen. Like it wouldn't take any damage, it wouldn't get set alight. It was just embarrassing.
Yeah. Well, before I'd seen it praise. I will throw an immediate criticism at Firebolts, to be fair. There's a lot of things that they really aren't they just can't do. It's not versatile overclock at all, and so taking up the majority of the crossbow's ammo pool is somewhat damaging. Like,
in
it
all
doesn't
fairness,
do any actual damage over time, and if it did, I thought, okay, this could potentially build towards a more general, like I could incorporate this into a general use build, but the fact that it doesn't actually deal with base damage over time and it just applies heat, nothing else, means it's like, oh, so it doesn't do anything against the Dreadnought. It can barely do anything against the robots, which is weird considering it's fire as well. It's odd. It's not for single target damage, basically.
yeah. I mean, in all fairness, I literally, when I did use the crossbow, I haven't used it much because I haven't done much recently. But when I just used the acid bolt, I never even so much as touched the main ammo because it just wasn't worth it, really. Like wow, I can just kind of kill a grunt. This is definitely worth the time of loading this arrow and then reloading after. Like, no, I'm just gonna switch to my primary. But I guess if it's like actually, that kind of stuff, so it's useful every so often, like the special bolt, they probably would use it more.
Yeah, because the firebolts, they definitely seem weak, but that's only because you can't just fire them willy nilly, as they say.
I think it's the same with all of the crossbow mainly, really. I think.
Yeah, but I do think taser bolts are just confusingly bad to me still. I'm not quite. I mean, I would admit sometimes it's because they just don't work, but that's not a good thing. Sometimes it feels like they just don't work. Like they just the Tesla thing, connecting the two, just stops sometimes, like very early on, and it's like, oh, that can't be right.
Do you think it only has like a certain amount of damage it can do?
No.
It's like allowed to do. No.
No, that doesn't sound right at all. Yeah, so what I found with firebolts is that pheromones are the way to go, unsurprisingly, because they're generally the best for that. Well, no, I'm not going to use acid bolts. What are they actually called?
They're like the chemical explosion, something like that.
Yeah, special bolt chemical explosion. That's a weird name for an upgrade. I'm not going to use those as firebolt because I get my AoE from the firebolts. And yeah, chemical explosion is a weird one though, because it doesn't work against certain things, or quite a few things actually. I think you could apply it to most enemies, but it's not going to do much to a Dreadnought, is it? You'll get some damage over time, but it's not going to do numbers, is it? And then you also can't apply the effect to any robots.
Yeah, but there's not always robots, and
No.
and normally, that's why you kind of have other weapons, and especially for the crossbow, it has two weapons in it of itself. So the only thing the only actual overclock I've got on the crossbow is the tri-bolt. That's what I put on the that. So basically, if there was a big fella and I didn't want to deal with him with my primary, I'd just absolutely violate him with the tri-bolts, which it would use like all the ammo, but he'll die.
Yeah. Tri-bolt volley annoys me, but I'm not going to get into that. I don't think either of the unstables are that great, to be honest. Stupid, sexy crossbow.
Please, would you say that the crossbow is, or how like your most used, like considering I'd say at this point in time it's probably my least used weapon, and yet it's the one I've talked about the most because
I've probably used at this point. I think out of the four new weapons, the coil gun is probably the one I've used the least, even though I have a good deal of respect for it, actually. Crossbow I've just been using a lot because I'm just obsessed with these firebolts. They're not the best thing in the world, but I find them so satisfying to use. And how you do it really, it's not a single firebolt on its own isn't actually going to do that much. It's always going to need to be paired with other things, ways of grouping enemies together, and things like that, it's always going to be comboed with you've sort of already taken some weight off your back before it sort of comes into play. But it will do a lot of work for you in terms of, yeah, I mean, a pheromone bolt, if you put a pheromone on like a guard or a Praetorian, it's gonna like sort of keep a bunch of enemies off you for a while, but they're not gonna die. But if you put a firebolt on the enemy that you've pheromoned, pretty much everything that goes towards it will die. And you know, like I said, it's really bad against big targets, right? But I use those as sort of like a focal point. So I'll pheromone a big target and then put a firebolt on it.
So the fact that they don't then really die becomes an advantage.
Yeah, but also you do end up doing some good damage because obviously all those enemies that are attracted to it will attack it, and they'll be set on fire quite easily. And then they'll help set that on fire too. So you'll end up doing a decent amount of damage, and then it won't be difficult to finish off. What is weird though is that I don't use pheromone grenades with firebolt. I use IFGs, but it just gives me, which I consider not more useful.
Well, how many?
Actually,
you get
I
like
consider
4 pheromones,
bolts,
right? Like,
yeah, I consider pheromone bolts better than the grenades, to be honest. Pheromone grenades are just a bit too much sometimes, and with the IFGs, I can sort of just. It will have similar effects. If a bunch of enemies are coming towards me, I can put an IFG down and put a firebolt in the IFG, and it will clear up most of them.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the pheromones may be a bit too much, but it also, you might not want to run the crossbow, and you might want to have pheromones, so you kind of end up using it there.
That's fair, but I do think that if you're using pheromone bolts on the crossbow, you're probably better off choosing not pheromone grenades. I think that's a fairly...
Yeah.
That makes sense, I think. Right? I think most people actually agree with that. So yeah, lovely crossbow. Lovely, it's good.
It is. It's one of them. It seems that you could use very poorly, and it would be like one of the worst guns in the game. But if you put like a second of thought and effort into using it, it will be very rewarding, especially for a scout.
Yeah. Don't get me wrong. The firebolts, they feel weird. Like the whole weapon feels weird. Like the whole weapon comes across as weaker than it is, I think. But this applies to the firebolts very strongly, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because they are slow as well, but I can take care of massive groups of enemies very easily with like a single firebolt if I play it right. But people will sort of just like fire one at a guard or something. It doesn't do much, and they're sort of just what's the point of this thing? It's just like, no, it's good. It's pretty good. I really haven't used it against Macteras though, which is so odd. I've been using it a lot. Yeah, I feel like I haven't come across any Macteras while using it, and I'm like, I want to see if this actually, because it should be fine. It should be able to. I've got 27 bolts. I should be able to one shot most Macteras with it. To be honest, probably not Brundles. Yeah, 27. That's the base that you can get if you take the ammo upgrade.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, it is. It's a lot. I've been considering taking more pheromone bolts instead because actually you end up using.
Well, yeah, if you use them in tandem, then yeah.
Yeah, I might actually do that. Right now, I'm going to switch 13 pheromone bolts. Yeah, and it's sort of like I don't miss when I use firebolt. I don't miss the single target damage of the crossbow because it's not the kind of thing that you do miss. Really, it's not the best.
No,
it's actually the thing is it's good, but it's not usefully good. It's like it can one shot grunts, but it's not very quick, and it can only like one shot one grunt at a time, and it can't really do enough damage to a Praetorian to sort of justify it. I don't know. It's in a really weird spot when it comes to just the crossbow's base single target damage.
I think. Well, correct me if I'm wrong, but like most of the overclocks, like mess around with them. So I think the base single target like crossbow isn't supposed to be anything special.
No, it's not.
Like it is supposed to be something that you turn into fire or ice or triple or I think ricochet, right? Is that one? Yeah.
Hold points.
Like it expects you to do stuff with that. Which is why I think it makes sense that, there's only one specialist upgrade as far as that stuff goes, right? I mean,
Yeah, and the overclocks are more geared towards making your base bolts another special bolt, really, or
Yeah.
just giving them a different function, which is kind of expected.
Although I think I saw something like a slight point. I'm not sure where I saw it, but like people noted the whole retrieving the crossbow bolt is really not a feature. It's like so many of the things that it does, you cannot retrieve it back. Like
yeah,
like
yeah.
so many.
I
of
would
them.
barely call it a gimmick, to be honest.
No, I think no. I think I would call it a gimmick. I think that is how I define it because it's such an irrelevant part of the gun.
Well, I call it a gimmick if it sort of presents itself. Like, it uses that to market itself, I suppose. I don't think it does.
It did though. Like when
doesn't
they
mention it anywhere
when they pushed the
game.
crossbow when they were launching it, they pushed the retriever as like more important than the special bolts. I think it got more time than the special bolts.
Probably has something to do with Banshee module.
Yeah, but then that's only viable if you don't actually. I mean, Banshee module was probably the thing you would want to run if you pick the specialist overclock. You would want your primary shots to be bansheed, I would imagine, because that's going to be the only time that you can shoot them down and pick them back up, which is when they're strong. But yeah, it's a gun that I've talked honestly, I've spent more time talking about it than I have using it at this point.
Probably spent more time talking about most of them than using them.
No, I mean, I mean, right here, I've actually, well, in hand, probably, actually. But if you count just having it in your hotbar, right now we're watching an hour-long footage of me having the coil gun, and I'm confident I haven't talked about it for that long. And I couldn't. It's so aight.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's sort of it's a trend. It's a trend across these new secondaries. They're all more I'm not sure if generalised is the right word, but they're all trying to do a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
And the shot of practice definitely the most generous one out of the bunch, but they're sort of all doing a similar thing, in that you don't actually feel that much like secondaries, to be honest. They all feel a bit more like primaries than secondaries.
Well, that's because they have more. You have to spend more attention to them to make them good or use them than you do your primaries. You spend more time fiddling with them than your primaries. Like, it's kind of inevitable. Like we made the observation that Gen 3 stuff is like a lot more complicated than the other ones, but then I realized like I was looking at like some things, and the Gen 3 primaries aren't that more complicated. I mean, they obviously are, but like with the amount of like secondaries that most of their upgrades add like a plus and then a couple words underneath the things.
Yeah.
Like you like with the crossbow, with like the wave cooker, so many of them you just end up with a bunch of pluses at the bottom. Where for most of the other guns in the game, that's not really the case. Like even the primaries, which.
But that is sort of indicative of another problem, I think. There's something that we have discussed before, but I'm not sure we've done it on the podcast. About the game definitely has a problem with relaying certain information. There's a lot of information that really isn't available, and in some cases I don't mind. To be honest, I don't because especially when it comes to the overclocks, I don't particularly mind that it doesn't fully explain every mechanic in detail. It's just like you're not a noob, and part of the fun of the game is sort of figuring things out. But there is a certain amount of information that really isn't communicated, and it should be. I have a good example of this now, and it comes from the wave cooker. The fact that we know the wave cooker doesn't actually deal kinetic damage, and that's why it doesn't. That's why it doesn't deal weak point damage. But it's sort of like, okay, so what?
So does it not also? It doesn't get buffed by ice.
No.
I mean, then again, it with temperature shock, right? So it has that.
Yeah, but not by default. It wouldn't. Although it feels like it
would.
should, but
It defaults heat, right?
not heat, just fire damage.
Yeah,
Heat
which
doesn't-
causes
no,
heat.
Fire damage and heat.
Fire
aren't
damage
the same
sets
thing.
things on fire, Harry. And
No,
if you set
heat
things on...
damage sets things on fire.
But the gun default sets things on fire. It always sets things on fire. So therefore it's dealing
No.
heat damage.
No, the wave cooker doesn't.
Oh, wave cooker.
Yeah.
I may have been thinking about a different gun.
You were thinking about a different gun. You're thinking about the shard diffractor.
Yeah.
The
They're
wave
also
cooker.
complicated names.
Are they?
Yeah, no, yeah.
It's got no numbers in them.
Well, not many of them. Oh, none of them really do. But you know, it used to be just like flamethrower, minigun, revolver.
No. Stop. I'm gonna have to stop you there, mate. Flamethrower. It's called the CRISPR flamethrower.
Yeah, but it's a flamethrower.
CRSPR.
It is a flamethrower. You call it a flamethrower, right?
The wave cooker is a cooker.
So it's a flamethrower. Flames cook. But like,
Point. No, it's a crisp. It crisps.
thing is, you can't easily describe the gun, right? And admittedly, that is it's not relevant to everything because Thunderhead is Thunderhead. You know what I mean? Like, it's quite hard to describe it. But its name is relatively simple. But I mean, it's still not an argument. But yeah, gone are the times where you could just like, just
Gone are the days.
yeah, like, you know, assault rifle for Scouts 1. And now he's got 2 technically. But I mean, the plasma is still way more SMG in my opinion. But fine, whatever.
Well, I can't deny it's at least slightly more complicated. But you can sort of. I think you're just this is just you getting slightly confused. I think things are still relatively simple. I can sort of just. It's just because the names don't strike you as immediately familiar. It's just like the minigun, the shotgun, but then again there were 2 shotguns from the beginning, so we sort of came to be like, now I don't think anyone calls them the shotgun. People either call them engineer's shotgun and scout shotgun, or they call them the warthog and the boomstick. It hasn't always been single layered. I think when it comes to just name dropping weapons quickly, but like crossbow is one of the simplest ones, but it's not even doesn't have the word crossbow in its name, but everyone just calls it the crossbow. Yeah,
because it's a crossbow. You can simply define the weapon, like. But yeah, for the other ones, I mean, what's it? I mean, engineer secondaries. I mean, grenade launcher, yeah, but then like the not plasma cut. Is it plasma? It's not plasma. It's cutter one, the breech cutter. That's all I don't know how you describe it, which is why I always try to say the name, but then I always mess up the name. It's all.
But it's still its name. Nothing else shares its name, so it's still. It describes itself.
But its name is like a bunch of random bullshit that doesn't really mean anything.
It's fine. I know it doesn't really mean anything, but I think this might be a you problem.
Yeah.
Just getting confused.
Perhaps.
It's not that complicated. Speaking of, well, not really speaking of, but we mentioned the shard diffractor. I've sort of been cooling on it a little bit. Not moving away from it necessarily. But also yes, because we played a little bit yesterday and I didn't use the shard diffractor for engineer. But that's because I sort of just wanted to make sure I was using something I was very comfortable with. And I'm struggling to find builds with the shard diffractor that feel always right, because in my opinion, the shard diffractor is better actually at single target damage than crowd clearing. Even though the damage of both, the direct damage and the area damage are identical. But I think the reason I feel this way is probably, I'm not sure. I think it is probably to do with the fact that they are equal. And to me, it should be better. It should be like inherently better at area of effect than single target damage, in my opinion. And
what you think? You think the shard diffractor should be better at area?
Yeah.
No.
I mean, maybe it's not really my place, but
I think he's got ample area of effect, area damage weapons. Like I mean, that's what basically the sodding grenade launcher is. You know, area of effect. Obviously, you can make it direct damage, but now you probably wouldn't. I mean, you might still.
Yeah,
People really
but-
like it, but
But they don't. And this is something that I realised fairly recently. They don't create weapons actually to fill gaps, because if they're creating weapons to fill gaps, that means you're sort of already unequipped in some way, no matter what you're using. So it might.
Well, it's
And I
just-
think deep down, I've held to the opinion all along that new weapons are really just new methods of doing what you already did, not actually new functions entirely.
well, it's like a gradient thing. Like, because obviously the shard diffractor is still an area of effect. It still has a pretty strong area damage, but now it leans a bit more towards direct damage than the other weapons. So if you want a bit more direct damage while also having AoE, you use that. If you want pure AoE, you use the grenade launcher. If you want plenty of direct damage with also a technically area of that direct damage, you use like the breach cutter. I actually said it right. I'm so proud.
Well, to me, the breach cutter is sort of actually the grenade launcher just sits on its own, sort of just AoE. But the breach cutter and the shard diffractor are sort of almost the inverse of each other, in my opinion. In that, well, the breach cutter is slightly unorthodox. Oh no, it's very unorthodox in how it works. It doesn't actually do area damage, but it's still one of the best clearing weapons. But it leans more towards, in my opinion, crowd clear than single target damage. But its single target damage is still pretty good, and I think it's the other way around for the shard diffractor, where it actually leans more towards single target than area of effect, but it's still pretty good at area of effect.
Yeah.
I think my problem with it is, and at first, because I think it's the strength of the plasma carbine that it's a fairly simple weapon by default, and the shard diffractor also is, for the most part. Like, when you really look at it, it's not introducing actually any crazy new mechanics. It's sort of gone the wrong way for a more simple weapon, in my opinion, in that it's very rigid. You can't push it in any direction too much. Like, I want to take away most of the direct damage and just go for area damage, and you can sort of do that with the endothermic explosion, which is the platform one. But it's slightly unintuitive, and I wish I could push it. You can't push it in that many different directions with just the base upgrades, and the more extreme overclocks, to me, aren't that well balanced either. Like, overdrive booster is pretty bad in my opinion. And I understand it's like this crazy just excess. It's like the hyper propellant of the shard diffractor. But to me, it just comes across as inefficient and just painful to use, frankly.
I mean, I slapped it on the shard diffractor for like once because I just kind of got it. I'm like, oh, this seems cool, and I didn't notice a difference. It kills things. They die.
Did you actually boost with it?
What does that mean?
How are people missing this? It describes it. It tells you in the overclock description. You press I don't think it's actually in the description. I think it's actually in the text. For the positives. No, it doesn't actually. If you press reload while firing, and then it goes into boost mode, where it does 2.5 times damage, but it also uses 2 ammo every shot. And
Right.
uses up the whole clip.
This is the thing with the new weapons. It's just I read the thing and it was like you have to be like standing while overcharging. So that's what I thought it did. I thought it literally when you shoot, it forces you to stand, and okay, yeah, but it just didn't. Like I mean, because like you.
No, it tells you it's the first sentence.
Yeah.
Just drastically increase the energy output, the energy throughput. What? By pressing the reload button while the beam is firing. It does tell you straight away.
Yeah, but why does that need to be a thing? Why can't it be just like the old ones, where literally the second you just like shoot, it does it, right? Like face melter, that increases the damage. You don't see it doing all this special shit. Like why can't things just increase the damage anymore. Like, why does it have to be so fancy about it?
And then there's another one, feedback loop, which is a balanced one for the charge factor. AoE damage and range increases over the duration of the beam.
Yeah.
And you have much less ammo as well, which is it's a really painful one to use because it's not actually, it's like one of both per second. I think that's not bad for range, I suppose. That's quite a lot of range increase, but damage, one area damage increase per second.
I mean, it's obviously that's not just an easy boost, but that's at least you don't have to press a certain button at a certain time and play like do shit like that.
No,
right? It will just kind of do it, right? like you need to kind of play around it a little bit, right? You want to have the longer charges for the more enemies, but like it'll happen. You don't have to like time it and do shit like that. Like, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. This game's not as simple as it used to be. Can't just put on an overclock.
Back in my day, we could just, I could use Big Buffer and do more damage.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
Like, I sound like I'm being funny, and I am, but it's kind of true. It is very true.
Yeah. Bitch, you know. It is
Not
what
everything,
it is.
but the thing is, not everything needs to be more simple. But these are the kind of things that should be, because they're not doing anything that.
The thing is,
they're sort of just being upgrades, but awkward about it.
Yeah, the thing is, it's like it's not that big of an issue, but there isn't a simpler version if you can't be asked to put all this much effort in. You know what I mean? Like, if you just want to have a bit more like damage, right? Lose a bit of ammo. That's not an option. You have to go like press reload while doing it. Like, I don't know.
Or you have to shoot a platform to get better AOE.
Yeah, like I mean, because you know, obviously at some point they're gonna add like more overclocks and shit like that.
Yeah.
So like it just, I don't know, and we're doing a series on it, obviously.
We're doing the work for them, actually.
Yeah. But I'm not even sure how well we've encapsulated. Like my stubby idea, where like the more enemies you electrocute, the more damage you do. I mean, that is on the more complicated side. But I think that's because the stubby's kind of already got the simpler ones. You know what I mean? Like, it's still pretty, you know. So there's just ones that have like everything you want to do, you can do it simply, or you could do it like complicated, and I guess it pays out better. Like, you probably get like more damage out of it, or more whatever you want out of it. Like, there should just be a range of how you want to play the game, whether it's you.
Which is why I think the crossbow is actually pretty decent in this regard. Crossbow and the wave hooker, because they're not the kind of weapons where you would expect very basic overclocks for. Like, the shard diffractor is sort of what should be basic overclocks masquerading or just being more complicated than they need to be. But you know, I maybe the wave cooker more so than the, I don't know, maybe the wave cooker more so. But even then, wave cooker's overclocks aren't that ridiculous. I'd say it's only some stables are. And even then, some unstables are pretty good, although the blistering necrosis still haven't used, actually.
Well, I watched the video, I think you watched it too.
Lazy, maybe.
Yeah. Blistering necrosis just is kind of bad. Like, you actually do less damage sometimes because of blistering necrosis. You can be worse off because of this overclock.
What I saw is that sometimes you do less damage, but not with the wave cooker itself. Apparently that's what it's best at doing, increasing the wave cooker's own damage output. But I don't need that. Wave cooker isn't really there for direct damage, and it never was, which is kind of its overall flaw.
Well, I think that's
the way it is.
That's what it's like. That's what blistering necrosis' goal is for. It's an option for killing big guys, like to have this special blistering necrosis thing, because they can't just make it do more damage. That's just not an option, apparently. Like you know, just have it be good. It needs to have this special blistering effect. But,
to be fair, I haven't seen too much complaining recently, though, which makes sense. It does tend to die down, but at the same time...
Thing is, I wouldn't even say that. I mean, obviously this is complaining. Don't get me wrong, but I don't give that much of a crap about all this stuff. You know, it's fine, right? The game is very fine in its current state. Like, it is. It has got enough content. It's got enough everything. It is good. It's just, you know, they're gonna keep adding stuff and keep doing stuff, and how well it's gonna like settle down eventually is the question. Like, you know, they keep adding more crazy and weird and stupid overclocks. How well that's gonna, you know, turn out.
But what they're gonna do, well, they have to add more, and will they add more? And that's why we find ourselves, as always, looking towards the future. I've no intentions of trying to do any season 3 predictions right now, especially not in this podcast. That's not what it's for.
No.
But I did perhaps want to talk about when we might get some news, and it's probably sooner than you think, because I wanted to make sure that I looked at. Well, I don't know if it's appropriate to call them roadmaps anymore, because I feel like a roadmap has to go beyond one update, right? I don't know if that's by definition,
it's just
but that
next update plan.
It's like the next thing we get would be like the season 3 roadmap.
Yeah.
I think that's actually not. I think that's fine. Because they used to sort of try and do like yearly roadmaps. I think,
but it never got past like 1 or 2 updates.
No. Do you remember that very old roadmap where it had the things like exploration mode on it, and then there was like the question mark stuff, and it's like new class. And it was like, whoa, this was the time when they had.
And like some of those,
whatsoever.
some of those question marks are probably things they mentioned during a meeting once and kind of put on there. And
exploration mode, I can see why that wouldn't be added. But endless mode, we'll save that though. That could be a whole podcast.
Yeah, sure.
But yeah, in regards to when we would see more news and what that would be, so I have it right here. Sorry, it's actually right on my screen. The season 2 roadmap came out on December 1st last year, right? So that's about like 4 months before season 2 came out. And that's less than a month after season 1 came out.
So we could actually expect to see it within the next couple of weeks.
Within the next 2 weeks, I think, probably.
Yeah.
If that's anything to go by, and it should be, because frankly, I am not expecting, or at least I would find it very concerning if there was a longer gap, a longer wait between this season and last. Same, it's like it was a long wait, but if it's the same, that's fine.
I feel like
consistency, but I think it should be slightly shorter.
The guns were clearly a lot, right? Like, I think the last season they had the guns and the game mode, which I think, you know, that was like fair enough. Take as much time as you want, right? That is a lot of stuff they're adding. Not to mention the seasonal concept and execution as a whole, right? And I think they took season 1 how long to get out there, right? How long?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I mean, they did the kind of quickie season, but it was really like a year in the making, I think, like coming out of it. Like, I think it was a very long time, I think. I don't know. But, yeah, season 1 took a lot because it had a lot in it. This season had secondary weapons, which were clearly a lot, right? A lot of effort was put into it, a lot of balancing, a lot of ideas, and designing and all that, and the seasonal stuff. But I would say, as far as, you know, considering last time they had the game mode, and this is not a discredit, but it was smaller. This small update was kind of smaller than the last one. You know what I mean? They didn't have to create a whole new variant of enemies and a new game mode, right? They created the Nemesis and the Mutator, which just applied stuff. And they did also have the season event. So this update was smaller.
I think they put more work into the weapons this time around, proportionally too.
Yeah.
Like, I think they probably put more effort into the content last season. That's not really the right way to put it. I mean, the seasonal content.
Yeah.
And I think this time around they put more effort to the weapons.
I mean, I think,
And I think next season we want to see, actually, not a balance, more time to the seasonal stuff probably, but also maybe not, because...
Well, I don't think... Yeah, I think from now on, and this doesn't have to be how it is, but I think a good shout would be from now on, the new additions to the game, the new things are the seasonal stuff, right? The new events are seasonal. The new cosmetics are seasonal. A new game mode, a new enemy, they're all seasonal, right?
Right, yeah. Sorry, yeah, this is a good idea.
And instead of and like, because for now we've had the guns, which I think was a good idea, right? Like, I mean, it's been a very long time since we had guns. Say what you will about these new ones, it's a good shout to have them, right? But from now on, I don't want it to be like seasonal stuff and the new additions in there, and then another new thing, right? Like, I mean, I think new is a thing. Reworks, right, or additions to current things is probably where we want to go with the other stuff, right? Like, instead of the, like the new guns and that, maybe new overclocks could be where they're going to go, which I think it's probably not. I don't think that's where they're going to go at all, because they just added new guns. They don't really want to be adding new overclocks to those guns.
I'm not expecting new overclocks in Season 3, but I actually am in Season 4, because it's something they said they were going to do at one point. Fairly recently. Yeah, I think it makes sense they're going to do overclocks, but like, I don't see why they would release these guns and then immediately, like, literally. No. I mean, like I said, not.
I know. But I think I'm trying to justify why it shouldn't be Season 3, in that they just added these secondaries, and then the next season they're going to be adding new overclocks to these secondaries, which is kind of weird. But yeah. I don't think we're going to get overclocks this next season, so I don't really know what we could get, because I don't think they should add, like, that much new stuff, unless they are going to add some of the more wild things that people want. I think they would fit into this, which is not exactly what I want, but it's a thing. If they added a new class, that would fit in. That would be a lot, far too much, and the season would be a very long, far away, because that's a whole ton of new guns, right? But
yeah, they're not doing that.
Yeah,
they're not doing it. They're just not doing it.
But if they're gonna do what our idea of a new class would probably be, as in new utilities and new movement for the dwarves, so that they are basically new classes, that could be something that they could do. That would be on the same kind of tier as guns. If they feel like they need to keep doing shit like that to really get people playing, that would kind of be what it is.
And it's also more welcome to me, I think, than more weapons. Yeah, I mean, this doesn't really go, honestly, because you've explained that you want them to start looking a bit more, but this doesn't really hurt your wishes, does it? If they were to go and add more traversal tools and
I think this is like, because I think it's completely reasonable for them to do this, right? Like, people want new content, right? They want people coming back for new things, but I think people would be satiated by the new content being in the seasonal stuff. But if they feel the need to continue doing the kind of big gameplay additions that the guns are, then utility movement would be up there.
Well, I mean, to go back to what you just said, just like a second ago, it's actually an interesting idea that I didn't consider, that they don't need to add stuff like that to, like, for it to be in accordance with a seasonal model. They really only need to make the seasonal events and content tied to that. They don't need to add new equipment or new stuff like that at all to make it.
And they don't.
Right, and it would take this time as well. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if Season 3 didn't add anything in that department. Although some new perks would be nice.
Well, that would be the kind of thing it would be, right? That's what I'm kind of thinking would be better of a kind of option, really, is if, like, instead of new guns and new big stuff like that, it is, like, eventually new overclocks. So it kind of adding on to what's currently here. New perks, or a perk rework, or something like that.
The perks thing has actually been on the community's mind, it seems, recently.
I think
people have been suggesting new perks and asking for new perks and all that sort of stuff.
It makes sense, considering, like, you've got to admit, right? I know that you've always advocated and reasoned, and this is fine, that having an ungodly amount more stars than perks is reasonable, considering then you can play the game how you want to get all the perks.
It's excess now. It's excess when you have all the points.
It was excess anyway, right? But now we've had like 2 more seasons, and we're going to keep getting more and more stars that are more and more useless. It would make sense for them to add like honestly, maybe double the amount of perks. I think.
Right, hold on. Take the amount of passive perks, and and that number, but divvied up to both passive and active.
Right. I think, as much as I think the update should, I think it's unreasonable. Bear in mind the amount of effort they put into the guns, right? Do you honestly think, like, what is it, like 13
Well, this is
more
assuming that they
perks?
want to put the same amount of effort into every season.
Yeah.
But I don't think they do. They probably want to reduce the amount they have to do so they can actually have
Yeah,
more frequent update.
But think about it though, like the more frequent the updates, the more effort the season stuff side becomes. Because the more seasons they pump out, the more seasonal content they have to do. So theoretically, the workload stays the same, right? It just has people less time to do the seasons. Like,
Okay. Oh shit! My knee just clicked.
like yeah, like the workload. It like the more if they do seasons more often, they're gonna just have to add more seasonal cosmetics and seasonal challenges and seasonal content, right? That's just gonna be a thing they have to do more.
The cosmetics actually I see being one of the biggest problems.
Yeah.
To be honest.
So I think,
and frankly, I was going to make a point earlier about how I don't like that. Majority of the cosmetic tree is the new framework, but frankly, if I want them to do more frequent updates, I think it's actually fair to let them rely on things like that to fill out the cosmetics. So
yeah,
I don't mind, to be honest.
And clearly they're not really struggling, but also the cosmetics aren't that revolutionary. Like as happy as I am, don't get this wrong, I'm incredibly enjoyed by pleased by this, but most of the armor skins that they added this season are weapon skins.
Yeah, when you go back and look, well, not go back, when you look at season 1 and 2, they have actually sort of been doing the armor and weapon skin matchup thing.
Yeah, they've been doing that stuff.
In the cosmetic tree, you have boot camp, that you have armor and weapon skins.
Yeah, which is good, and I'm happy and I'm chuffed, right? But it does mean that they're gonna run out, right? They're gonna run out of skins that they've kind of tied back together. They don't want to pump out seasons because they'll just and maybe if they do seasons quicker, then seasons will just be smaller. That might be an option, right? Like they reduce them to like 80 or 60, I think
it'll be
that
fine.
kind of thing.
And then the cosmetic tree would be almost nothing but the framework.
Yeah, no real filler.
And that's fine. Because
Stuff.
cosmetics aren't my priority. I want them to add new cosmetics regularly, but they don't. And they didn't. I don't think they did add as much as season 1 added in this season. And I think they go even smaller, and that's just fine. If it takes the edge off and lets them work on, frankly, what I believe is more valuable content, then I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Bring it down to 80 tiers. Have the seasons be 3 to 4 months long instead of 5 months. It's like,
I think if they could somehow get it to 3 months, which I think is a bit ridiculous. I'm sorry, but for a team of their size, that is not going to happen. Really.
Look at it realistically. What could they actually get out in 3 months? Like one seasonal event, maybe an enemy or two.
Yeah,
because
bear in mind that was like about the speed.
Cosmetics.
That was like about the speed that were pumping out, like when they were just throwing updates out and like adding like beers and stuff like that, and that's like it.
But it was like a couple months between them still, even though it's sort of random small stuff. So frankly, the amount of work that they've been able to put out in the amount of time it's been between seasons, it's actually fairly a lot for them, really.
Yeah. It has been really good, and especially because it's like a variety of things, right? Like they used to just kind of zone in on something, like 2 new game modes. This is the update. We are putting all our effort into that, but now they got to think about the seasonal stuff, which is an event like game mode, sometimes game mode or warning, and like enemies and all of that. They got to do this wide range, and now they have to do guns and the upgrades and that. They're so creatively, right? That I don't know. I think if you do want to speed it up without inherently like doing much, like just kind of focus it in a bit, maybe, like have it all be related, like so then they can just kind of like focus. I don't know. Like they're just like, okay, we're doing perks. We are doing perks, and the season could be I don't know, like. biomes, the more enemies in the biomes, and then that's what they do. They'll do enemies and perks, and that's like it. And then the cosmetics that they always kind of do anyway. And then boom, they can just focus on that. And I don't know. We probably will do a full on, because considering you mentioned that actually now season 3, like at least what they're intending to do is not that far away. That could be a thing we do. Speculation, because it won't be that long until we find out.
I think so. Next week, I do actually want to discuss the sort of. We'll do sort of a bunch of crap as usual, sort of wing it for the most part. But I do want to sort of talk about the endless mode idea, and that could carry us for a lot of the time. But after that, let's talk about season 3 predictions.
Well, I mean, it's because I mean, it's not long now until we'll know the rough outline of season 3. Obviously, we won't know like bugger all about the details of seasons, like
no, because if you carry on, sorry.
But like, I mean, we got to wrap it up. By the way, we are very close to the end. But yeah, I think it won't be long now, so we'll talk about that next time. Thank you for watching or listening to Barrel Vision.
Right, so
Harry, there's no time. Mission completed.
The roadmap for season 2 didn't actually mention like the main season at all. It literally just said new secondary weapons.
Exactly. We'll learn that stuff, and we'll be discussing that stuff next time.
Next time.